I want to come back to the book and the purpose of the book. So
This is the last question. We're at time. We gotta go. Sorry.
yeah. Well, that's almost a first, not an absolute first, but to have a member of staff of the former Vice President of the United States actually speak up during the interview to say that we were going too long. I didn't expect that. But coming back to the interview itself, it seems to me at its very heart, there is a reluctance on the part of Kamala Harris to actually spell out and talk about the issues that Joe Biden had as president. Was it Joe Biden's decision, his failure to recognize his own frailties in that position that put you in the position that made it almost impossible to win that race?
He was not frail as president of the United States.
Madam Vice President, there's nothing you said I couldn't ask you.
Because I have a lot to say. And so, fuck it. I was in a state of shock.
Really? Did you think the day before that you were going to win the election?
I did.
Yeah. And so when did the proverbial penny drop?
When I got a call from my campaign manager that it looks like we need 200,000 more votes that we can't find. Meaning it's just the map, the numbers. And the thing I kept saying over and over again, I was in a state of shock. I was so inarticulate, but maybe very articulate. What I kept saying over and over again is, my God, my God, my God.
Really?
Over and over. I couldn't stop. I haven't felt that emotion, anything similar to the emotion I felt that day and for quite some time, other than the grief I felt when my mother died.
Boy. So we got to continue our coverage of Kamala Harris's disastrous book tour, in which she continuously gets confronted about covering up Joe Biden's mental decline. Because let's be real, nobody gives a damn about what Kamala has to say outside of the fact that Kamala Harris cover up Biden's mental decline, right? Did you know that Biden was mentally declining? Did you lie to the American people as vice president? Now, it's really funny because Kamala Harris is trying really hard not to throw Joe Biden under the bus. But no matter how hard she tries, she is continuously getting pressed and called out to her face on her BS answers because, again, they're nonsensical that she's given in this interview. Kind of similar to Karine Jean-Pierre, who is also getting embarrassed in these interviews that she continues to do, trying to sell her book as well, too, because, again, this is what the Democrat Party has become at this point, right? Everybody's trying to make a dime off of the disastrous Biden administration. So in this interview, I believe that Kamala Harris is still in Europe, right? She was in the UK last time I checked in on her. But this reporter is from ABC News Australia, and she's going to check Kamala Harris on the fact that, again, her answers are nonsensical when it comes to her explanation of Joe Biden. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it.
Wasn't Joe Biden then, to put it on him, wasn't his refusal to recognize his own frailties the reason that you faced a nearly impossible task?
I ran against Donald Trump for president, and Donald Trump ran on a platform that was, in large part, I believe, misrepresenting his intentions to the American people. I do believe that there are a fair number of people that voted for Donald Trump who believed him when he told them that his first priority on day one is going to be to bring down prices. And he didn't. And you combine that misrepresentation of intention with also what was at play in terms of massive amounts of mis and disinformation.
Now, forgive me.
And a truncated calendar in terms of the clock.
I want to interrupt you because that is a world-class pivot, but it is not the question that I asked you.
Wow. I wish that the American media would do this to the Democrat politicians who do the exact same thing in interviews with the liberal media, where they're asked about a very specific question, a question that, again, makes a Democrat uncomfortable. She was asked about Joe Biden. She immediately pivots to Trump, right? Talking about Trump. With the woman didn't ask about Trump. She asked about Biden. And I love the fact that this woman called her out to her face, saying, hey, that's a world-class pivot. Like, you're dodging. You're not actually trying to answer the question that I asked you, right? And I love the fact that, again, she's holding Kamala accountable and not letting her get away with this BS.
Which is about Joe Biden's failure to recognize his own frailties and what that did to you. The question is about Joe Biden, are you still reluctant to criticize the former president?
In what regard, please?
Well, just in terms of that question. So you went
What
on.
exactly would you like to ask? Be more specific, if you don't mind.
Was it Joe Biden's decision, his failure to recognize his own frailties in that position, that put you in the position that made it almost impossible to win that race?
He was not frail as president of the United States.
But he had frailties. We all saw the debate.
I do believe that Joe Biden had the capacity to be president of the United States, and I have never doubted that he had the capacity to be president of the United States. If you want to talk about whether he had the ability to endure what a race for president of the United States would require in that political environment in 2024, as I've said in the book, I had concerns.
I'm just wondering, is there a reason why you won't go to that prolonged frailty question? Well, we saw the debate, we saw the difficulty he had marshalling his thoughts.
I have answered that question. I do not believe that
I think it's just hard watching the debate to see how there could not be a problem long term with someone who can't marshal their thoughts. I'm not saying his acuity wasn't
talked
present.
about that in the book, and I also mentioned the context in which that debate occurred. And you'll probably remember how I talked about that in terms of what his travel schedule had been, that what he had been enduring in terms of the timing of that debate. I talk about it extensively in the book. I'm not shying away from that. That's why I wrote it in the book, because I do know it's a question people had.
Yeah. So again, it seems like the foreign media, they don't like being gaslit, right, by our politicians, okay? Because this lady was like, "You're not gonna gaslight me on the fact that we all saw what happened with Joe Biden on that debate stage." Now, Kamala Harris, again, is being nonsensical here because she continues to give this canned response that, well, I never questioned Biden's ability to be president. I question his ability to run, right? To run and presumably to beat Trump, right?
Talking about competence at all. No, I believe he was fully competent to serve.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
That surprises me, actually.
No, I do. There's a distinction to be made between running for president and being president.
What's the distinction?
Well, being a candidate for president of the United States is about being in a marathon at a sprinter's pace, having tomatoes thrown at you every step you take.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah, it's more than a notion.
Get involved in public service, ladies and gentlemen.
And to be the seated president, the sitting president, while doing that, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. I think it's a hard case to make for people that he didn't have the stamina to run, but he had the stamina to govern. Because I think most people view the presidency as a marathon run at a sprint with tomatoes being thrown at you in terms of governance. So I think that drawing that distinction. And again, I recognize the incredibly difficult place you are in with that.
But again, the problem with this answer is that if you believed that Joe Biden could be president, if he had the capacity to be president, then he should have had a capacity to actually run. If he can't run, if you don't believe that he can run, right? If you didn't believe that he could run for president, then you should not believe that he can actually be president, right? I think that being president is just as hard as running for president, even though I've never ran for president, so I don't know, but I can only imagine the stress having to deal with, again, the job of president of the United States. Actually being president is tougher than running for president, okay? So again, I think that's why Kamala is continuously getting called out about this, because it really speaks to her judgment. Like, if you're going to be running for president again in the future, if you can't be straight with the American people about this, then you've already lost, right? You've already lost, which again is why she continues to get pressed on this issue, because she's not making any sense. She's not making any sense. But in another interview that she did with another podcaster, she did throw Joe Biden under the bus a little bit, right? She did actually have some things to say about Joe Biden. She also had some things to say about what she may or may not have done differently that she didn't say on The View before the election, which in my opinion, I think is part of the reason why she lost. So take a look.
I'm in the hotel room with Doug, with my husband, and the president calls, and I was told that he wanted to call me so that I'd be ready, and I was so sure it was to buck me up and go get him. And he did say that for the first beat. And then he went on to talk about a group of people in Pennsylvania who were saying bad things about me because they heard I was saying bad things about him. And when I hung up the phone, it was unbelievable. And I was angry and deeply disappointed. It was so unnecessary. There are only two people in the world other than me that has debated this guy, Hillary Clinton and him. And you know what it's like. It's going into a debate with the stakes being that high and Trump hadn't agreed to another debate. The stakes were so high. So that's an example of what I mean.
You took something from that. You took an underlying message about one's intentions from that, because I would. If someone called me in the lead up to debate prep and said something like that to me, I would assume that they don't want the best for me.
My takeaway is his motivation was all about himself.
That's what I would assume from that.
Yeah.
I would assume that.
Yeah, right. Obviously, right. Yeah. It wasn't about my performance at the debate. Well, you know, if I had done it over, again, part of the reflection, you know, we had the infrastructure deal. We had the CHIPS Act. So we're building back up America's infrastructure. It's 150 years old. CHIPS is about manufacturing chips, U.S. manufacturing, both incredibly important. If I had to do it over again, I would have first gone with our family policy. That was about extension of the child tax credit, affordable childcare, paid family leave. We needed to deal with the immediate issues affecting the American people. In fact, that's why I ran for the 107 days on those issues, including having Medicare cover, for example, for people in the sandwich generation who are taking care of young children and older parents, Medicare cover home health care, right? Mm-hmm. Why I offered for small businesses that they would get a $50,000 tax credit because nobody can, for startup small businesses, because nobody can start up a small business on a $5,000 tax credit.
Are you going to run again? Because I look at the polls. I looked at the polls, and you're leading for the Democratic side, and there isn't really a clear Democratic candidate. I interviewed Gavin Newsom as well, but when I look at the polls, you're still leading.
Yeah.
You don't know.
I don't know, honestly.
I feel like you know in your heart.
What do I know in my heart?
I feel like you know if you're going to run in your heart, or if you have a calling or a feeling to run. Is something germinating?
I'm focused on the book tour sincerely.
Yeah.
And part of how I'm feeling right now, part of the reason I didn't run for governor of California, I really don't want to be transactional right now.
Yeah, I really don't want to be transactional right now while I try to sell a book, right? Is anybody behind this, right? I don't want to be transactional while I'm selling a book, okay? Kamala, if you really aren't trying to be transactional, okay? If this is sincerely, I want to listen to people, I want to learn, I want to reflect, why are you trying to sell a book? You would think that you would do this before you write your book, right? That you would do all of this before you write the book, okay? But again, it is all about her possibly running again in 2028. And speaking of Gavin Newsom, who would be her closest opponent, right, in regards to giving her the most competition, he also talked about Joe Biden, and he's just as delusional when it comes to his answer on Joe Biden as Kamala Harris, because Gavin is claiming that Joe Biden was an amazing president.
And we'll continue to build on the legacy, I would argue, of our former president, who I think was one of the most successful presidents in the last century, and that is Joe Biden. And I will defend that till my grave in terms of the CHIPS and Science Act, the infrastructure bill, the work he did on the IRA, the fact that he had a worker-centered industrial policy, and the fact that those are the right policies for this country.
They're all getting undone, right? I mean, everything.
A lot of them, but not, well, many aspects are being celebrated by the Trump administration.
Yeah, so with all that being said, if this is what Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, the front runners in the Democrat primary right now, if this is what they're going to run on, Joe Biden was an amazing president, right? One of the most successful presidents in the last century. I'll defend that to my grave, right? If that's what you want to run on, Gavin Newsom, great. Kamala Harris, if you want to run on, well, I didn't know Joe Biden was mentally declining, right? If you want to run on gaslighting the American people about Joe Biden's mental condition, right? I didn't see Joe Biden as a frail person, right? Go for it. Gaslighting and lies, right? Just more gaslighting and lies. Democrats just never learn, man. They never learn. It's the same old all the time, over and over and over and over and over again. It really is fascinating. So again, we're going to see, right? But the two people who are running around doing all these interviews claiming that, I don't know if we're running for president, right? Clearly, they're trying to run for president. And I don't think they're off to a good start, right? I think they're off to a terrible start. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.